What's the connection between you and the area or the centre? How did that come about?
It was funny actually, because one of my friends, Anne-Marie James, who's an artist that I met when I was doing my MA, she's based in the area, and during the sort of 2020 lockdown she wanted to do something, so she invited lots of artist friends to make work on postcards to send to her, and then exhibited it in an exhibition called The Waiting Place, which was in the Art Station, so just on the ground floor entrance. And she and another artist, Emily, organised a virtual exhibition space. So we kind of had a virtual PV where they'd scanned in the works and then created these immersive, sort of almost like installations using them. So, you know, my work was on the ceiling in the disco room, and there was like a ballroom where they had lots of work with, you know, balls, which were mainly inspired by, you know, the dots from, you know, kind of WhatsApp when you're waiting and someone's typing to you or things like that. So that it kind of just stemmed from that really. But when Anne-Marie invited me, I sort of said, oh, you know, if she wanted, I could just send them some vinyl and they could stick it up in the windows. And then that just kind of became this other conversation really, where Claire and Jane, who run the Art Station, had contacted me and just said, well, actually we'd be interested in doing a bigger project. And I think for them, that because it's a new organisation, a lot of it was really about placemaking and helping to highlight the fact that the Art Station's there and find ways to bring people in and get them involved and start really building relationships, because there's no point having somewhere like that where you just have artist studios and you close the doors. And you really want to be involved with people in the area. And you know, like while I was there was quite a lot of, it was half term, so they had some workshops and various other things going on, so it was nice to be there and see that it's quite a sort of lively and active place.
They went from send us some vinyls to taking over 11.
Yeah, exactly right. And also, you know, writing this application to the Arts Council to get a big sort of some funding to support the project as well. So yeah, it really went from postcard to a 2-week install and 6 months.
You should send more postcards.
So, yeah.
We'll create more advice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the colour palettes, and this is something that I think is really interesting to kind of explore, because you know, just looking around your studio, they're all very uplifting, bright, kind of energetic.
Yeah.
And it struck me that you kind of do almost have this responsibility, as you said, to the area you're working in, because it's not just a sort of a painting on the wall that someone might put up and you can choose to look at it, maybe you choose not to look at it. What you do actually, it fills the environment, and so you are affecting the people around you. So how conscious of the colour palettes? Because you don't sort of come out with, like, you know, dark, doom type colours that could spread sort of, you know, ill feeling around you. How do the colour palettes come about? How consciously do you think about the areas and sort of what you fill them with?
I think that, you know, kind of a lot of it's quite innate really. So I just, initially when I'm approached to do a project, I normally go and do a site visit so I can get a sense of the place and feel what might work there. And I have, you know, different sort of treatments depending on, you know, first of all what my brief might be, and also how I think that it will lift a space. And for me, I'm really interested in creating stuff, like you say, that kind of seeps into the environment and interacts with the architecture. And the colour choices tend to sort of reflect the kind of mood that I'm wanting to create too. So I mean, I always have a tendency towards certain colours, and when I did the Art Station project, actually the initial installation I did in the downstairs space was red, orange and yellow, so very warm sunny colours. And when I went upstairs, aside from our conversation about the heritage palette, I also felt that it would be too strong and overpowering and have too much of an effect on people's, you know, moods or the way that they saw things. So I wanted to use colours that were a bit kind of clearer and paler. But when sometimes I do installations, you're just putting something there to really stand out and announce its presence. And other times it's more about sort of being cohesive with the environment.
So how long do you have to prepare in situ to sit? Because it's not, I guess it's not so easy to sit here and prepare for an environment that's it's sort of a living, breathing space. Do you have to spend a lot of time in prep looking at it and then designing it? Or can you get sort of models of it, bring it back and work from here? How does that?
It was multiple angles really. So normally I'll see images of the space before I go there. I'll talk to the people who've approached me to kind of understand what they're thinking, how they feel my work might suit the site, what kind of context the project's in as well. So I'm really interested in history of buildings and learning more about, you know, kind of why something is the way that it is, and, you know, kind of if I do something in a public space, I'm, you know, looking to gauge, you know, what the movement of people through it is. If it's a busy space, do I think people will stop and consider and contemplate the work, or do I just need to automatically kind of have that eye-catching impact? So it's a whole kind of factor of things, and because I've been doing it for a while now, you do get a sense of what you think might work, and I often go in with some initial thoughts or things that I'm looking for before the installation even begins.
Is it a bit more instinctive now, do you think?
Yeah, definitely, and it's a lot of it's, you know, based on experience. You kind of already start to think about what might work, and I would say, you know, primarily I'm an artist rather than a designer, so there's always that other element, which is that I make things that I'd like to make too, so rather than just sort of, you know, coming to someone and then telling me the brief and me absolutely interpreting it and trying to, yeah, exactly. I'm not quite wired in the way that I could just do whatever someone said. You know, always has to be something that interests me that leads into that point too. So.
But also, there's, you know, a brief can only go so far, because if you just designed to brief, they didn't need you in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, what's the point of hiring an artist? Do you find that, though, that obviously the creative element, is there any kind of battle between going and saying, okay, I've done something like this before, I know this how this kind of works, and I kind of know what's going to go in here, but I also want to create something new?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think as an artist, whenever you're making something, I mean, for me, the actual physical part of the making is quite important to the process, and although occasionally, you know, I outsource things and work with other people, I really love the process of making, because there's this kind of, you know, when you're going through it, the motions, you're kind of thinking and seeing how things interact by placing them, you kind of see what is and isn't working, and at the same time when you're, because my work's a bit like a collage in a way, you build up the image. So while I'm building it up, you sort of pause at points and take photographs and think, oh, this could be interesting for something else. And with every design I do, you know, I don't have one design, I have a couple of different ideas, and then I push them to a certain point and something kind of clicks. So there's always these other ideas that are sort of floating around in the background. And
so can you put things up and look, and because I saw a video of you doing that tape, I can't remember the name of the tape, and it looks,
tape, yeah.
and it looks so stressful because of is there going to be a bubble, and can it peel off, and will it peel off okay, and I just thought, can you do that then? Can you actually put stuff up and then think, actually, do you know what, I need to move this, or I need to change it? Because it looks like it should be very final. Once it's up, it's there.
Yeah, well, I mean, with all these things, it's not 100% permanent, and if you can change it while you're in the middle of the installation, while things are still drying and settling, you have a bit more time to move things around. Vinyl, and I mean also with the Harry tape as well, they're kind of quite deceptive, because, you know, it looks quite easy to put them up, but actually it's quite technical.
It looks terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I do, maybe I make it look easy then.
You've talked about how you obviously consider how the colours and the tones and shades are going to impact people. What about the actual sort of the geometric shapes? Because there must be some kind of logic as to how certain shapes are interpreted or seen by people, and how that affects them and their working space just as much as the colour. Does that play a part?
Yeah, definitely. I generally use geometric shapes rather than organic forms, because I like the fact that with the shapes they're knowable, and when you piece them together and build something, they kind of their interactions and the way they play together kind of works in this kind of like basic knowledge that you already have. You know, for example, if a triangle has 3 sides, but often actually, because they're going across window panels, the triangles that I'm making might be composed from bits of triangles that are actually, you know, kind of oblong shapes or whatever, that then builds up to kind of create this whole picture. But maybe there's something about kind of like the musicality of it and the harmony, but also creating a balance as well, and with using kind of, you know, straight lines and hard edges, the pieces really slot nicely in together. So for me it's kind of, there's more than just the actual shapes, but the rhythms that they create as well, that's really important.
Do these represent how your mind works?
Yeah, I'm quite mathematical, yeah. I mean, I always say that my works are a bit like jigsaw puzzles, because I enjoy, kind of piecing together. I use the grids as a way to set in motion a balance and work out really how they all come together. And it's sort of, I feel like when I'm designing the work, it's a bit like problem solving. It's it's a funny one, because obviously there's kind of lots of different elements to it basically.
Is it quite a cathartic kind of process for you?
Once I've worked out what I'm doing and I
Right.
like it, yeah.
And prior to that?
Yeah, it still can be. It's just with all these things, it's a little bit. It's hard to, when you've just got a completely blank canvas and you can do anything, it's hard to know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, you go back to thinking, well, these motifs worked well together, or this could be interesting. And at the moment I've been using quite a lot of curved shapes, and for the Art Station,
mm-hmm.
because I was thinking about the BT exchange point, that I was thinking about the idea of kind of what could have been happening in the building, and thinking about kind of the way that you'd move the wires along to kind of patch in calls to different people, and kind of just this like mess of all these things that's kind of like ordered but disorderly at the same time. So I wanted it to feel quite like there's lots of flowing movement within it. So it just really depends on the project as to what feels logical and what will work.